The morning mist clung to the ancient trees as Ilara moved silently through the forest. 300 years of serving as a border scout had taught her every sound, scent, and shadow of Sylvander's edge. Her silver eyes caught movement where there should be none, near the shimmering boundary that separated their realm from the outer lands. Ilara nocked an arrow, her breathing steady. Boundary breaches were rare. Most creatures sensed the powerful magic and stayed away. Whatever had triggered her warning spell was either desperate or dangerous. She crept forward, the soft moss muffling her footsteps. The boundary rippled unnaturally, its usual blue luminescence disturbed by swirls of amber where something had pushed through. Then she saw him. A figure lay sprawled across the sacred threshold, one arm still beyond the boundary. Blood trickled from a gash on his forehead, soaking into the earth. His chest rose and fell in shallow breaths. "By the elder tree," she whispered, lowering her bow slightly. The stranger wore bizarre clothing, fabrics she couldn't identify, with peculiar metal fastenings. No elven craftsmanship, no familiar tribal markers from the northern mountain clans. His ears were rounded, his frame heavier than any elf, his skin weathered by a harsher sun. Realization struck like lightning. The old tales, the forbidden histories kept by the memory keepers, spoke of such beings. A human, here, in Sylvander. Ancient protocol demanded she sound the alarm immediately and maintain distance. Humans were dangerous, unpredictable creatures whose legends spoke of their capacity for both miraculous innovation and devastating destruction. Yet something held her back. Curiosity, perhaps, or the strange, inexplicable feeling that this moment was somehow significant beyond measure. The human groaned, his fingers twitching. A small device tumbled from his grasp, a metal and glass construction unlike anything Ilara had ever seen. She picked it up carefully, turning it over in her slender hands. It glowed briefly, then went dark. "Who are you?" she murmured, knowing he couldn't answer. Duty and instinct battled within her. The council would demand his immediate removal. Humans didn't belong in Sylvander, hadn't been seen for generations. Their very presence disrupted the magical harmonies that sustained their realm. But the ancient healer's oath she had sworn alongside her scout's pledge echoed in her mind. No life that can be saved should be abandoned. Decision made, Ilara slung her bow and knelt beside the stranger. "You chose the wrong realm to visit, human," she said softly, checking his wound. The injury wasn't fatal, but he needed treatment soon. She touched her palm to the ground, sending vibrations through the root network that connected all of Sylvander. An emergency signal. Assistance required at the eastern boundary. Within minutes, the trees parted as 3 other scouts materialized from the forest depths, their expressions shifting from alert readiness to shock. "Ilara, what have you done?" Thorn, the eldest, hissed. "That's. I know what he is," she replied calmly. "He needs healing. The council will never. Then they can punish me afterward," she interrupted, already fashioning a stretcher from flexible branches. "Help me carry him to the healing pools." The warning bells began ringing across Sylvander before they'd traveled half a league, the sound echoing through the ancient forest. By sundown, every elf in the eastern settlements would know. A human had crossed their borders for the first time in living memory. And Ilara, respected scout of 3 centuries standing, had brought him in. Marcus opened his eyes to a ceiling that couldn't possibly exist. Living wood curved gracefully overhead, branches intertwining to form a perfect dome, while leaves rustled gently, somehow growing indoors. Soft blue light filtered through them, casting dappled patterns across his bed. Bed. He was in a bed. A remarkably comfortable one, woven from some material he couldn't identify. The last thing he remembered was hiking up Crestvale Ridge, taking a shortcut through that unusual fog bank. Then, nothing. "You're awake." The melodic voice startled him. Marcus turned his head and froze. A woman, no, not a woman, stood watching him. Her silver eyes lacked pupils, her ears tapered to delicate points, and her skin had a luminescent quality that no human cosmetic could achieve. She wore fitted garments of leather and fabric that seemed to change color slightly as she moved. "Am I dead?" he managed, his throat dry. "Or hallucinating?" The being tilted her head. "Neither. You crossed a boundary few of your kind have ever breached." "My kind?" Marcus struggled to sit up, wincing as pain lanced through his skull. "Humans," she replied, approaching cautiously. "I am Ilara, scout of the Eastern Grove." Marcus touched his forehead, finding it bandaged with what felt like soft leaves. "I'm Marcus Chen. Earth. Portland, specifically. Where exactly am I?" "Sylvander. The realm eternal." A young female with similar features entered, carrying a tray of unfamiliar fruits. She nearly dropped it upon seeing Marcus conscious, her eyes widening in undisguised fear. "It's all right, Lyria," Ilara assured her. "He's not dangerous." "How can you be certain?" Lyria placed the tray down and backed away. "The histories say." "The histories were written by the victors of ancient conflicts," Ilara interrupted. "And he's injured, not invading." Marcus accepted a strange blue fruit Ilara offered. "You're elves," he said suddenly, recognition dawning. "Like in stories." "And you are human, also like in stories," Ilara replied with the hint of a smile. "Though your appearance is less frightening than our tales suggest." The fruit tasted like a blend of blueberry and vanilla. As Marcus ate, Ilara explained his situation. How she'd found him unconscious at their realm's boundary, the council's outrage at his presence, and her responsibility to monitor him. "They want you gone as soon as you're healed," she admitted. "Humans represent chaos in our histories. Unpredictable, short-lived beings who reshape landscapes to their will." "That sounds about right," Marcus said with a weak laugh. A commotion outside drew their attention. Through the window, Marcus glimpsed a gathering of elves struggling with large water vessels. "The healing pools need replenishing," Ilara explained. "The drought has forced us to carry water from the lower springs." Marcus observed their inefficient system. "I could help with that." Despite Ilara's protests, he rose unsteadily. Outside, he gathered vines, branches, and smooth river stones, demonstrating a simple pulley mechanism. The elves watched with suspicious fascination as he created a system that reduced their labor by half. "How did you know to do this?" asked an elder elf with intricate facial markings. "Basic physics," Marcus shrugged. "Where I'm from, we don't have magic. We had to find other solutions." That evening, seated beside a reflecting pool, Ilara showed him the night sky. Marcus searched in vain for familiar constellations. "Nothing's the same," he whispered, the reality of his situation finally sinking in. "I'm not just in another country, am I? This is another world entirely." Ilara's expression softened with unexpected compassion. "Yes, and that makes you possibly the most interesting being I've encountered in 300 years." For the first time since awakening, Marcus smiled. Dawn broke with screams rather than birdsong. Marcus jerked awake to find Ilara already at his door, her usual composure shattered. "Come quickly," she urged, not waiting for him to fully dress. Marcus followed her through winding pathways to the heart of the settlement. A massive tree dominated the central clearing, larger than any redwood he'd ever seen. Its bark gleamed with faint luminescence, but something was wrong. Black patches spread across its surface like bruises, and half its leaves had withered overnight. "The elder tree," Ilara explained, her voice tight. "The anchor of our realm's magic. It's never shown signs of illness before." A circle of elves surrounded the tree, their hands pressed against its trunk, as they chanted in a language that made Marcus's ears buzz strangely. At their center stood an ancient elf with robes that shifted between emerald and silver. "Grand Magus Thalen," Ilara whispered, "our most powerful healer." The chanting reached a crescendo. Green light pulsed from the elves into the tree, then violently rebounded, throwing several of them backward. The Grand Magus crumpled to his knees, blood trickling from his nose and ears. "The forest rejects our magic," He gasped as attendants rushed to support him. Something interferes with the natural flow. Eyes turned to Marcus. Hostile, frightened eyes. The human's presence corrupts our realm, called a stern-faced elder. Since his arrival, the balance shifts. This is the consequence. Murmurs of agreement rippled through the crowd. That's impossible, Ilara protested. One human couldn't affect the elder tree. While arguments erupted, Marcus approached the tree cautiously. He studied its bark, the soil around its roots, the pattern of the black spreading across its surface. This isn't magical, he said suddenly, loudly enough to silence the bickering elves. It's poisoning. Absurd, scoffed the stern elder. You know nothing of our ways, human. I know toxicology, Marcus countered, kneeling to examine the soil. The pattern is consistent with groundwater contamination. Whatever's killing your tree is coming from below, not from any magical disruption. Skepticism met his words, but chaos struck again before arguments could resume. 3 elfling children collapsed near the central spring, convulsing violently. Their skin turned ashen as healers rushed to their aid. The water, Marcus said, sprinting to the spring. He sniffed it, then dipped a finger in and tasted the slightest amount before spitting immediately. There's something metallic here, possibly heavy metals or chemical compounds. The Grand Magus, still weak, approached Marcus with newfound interest. Explain this contamination you speak of. Using a stick, Marcus drew diagrams in the dirt, water tables, underground flows, contamination patterns, concepts the magic-dependent elves had never needed to understand. Your magic fails not because it's weakening, but because it's fighting the wrong enemy, he explained. You're treating symptoms, not the cause. To demonstrate, Marcus gathered charcoal from a cooking pit, crushed river stones, and layered them in a hollowed gourd with fine sand. When he poured spring water through this crude filter, it emerged clearer. This removes some contaminants, he explained, but we need to find the source. The Grand Magus studied the simple device with amazement. Such solutions without magic. Humans adapted without magical abilities, Marcus said. We had to understand how things work mechanically, chemically, physically. A young mother clutching her recovering child approached Marcus. Can you help us? Before he could answer, the sound of splitting wood cracked through the air. A massive branch crashed down from the elder tree, narrowly missing the gathered elves. Time is running out, Ilara said, looking from the dying tree to Marcus. Whatever knowledge you possess, we need it now. Pink gold light filtered through the forest canopy as 4 figures slipped away from the settlement. Ilara led the way, her silver eyes constantly scanning for danger. Marcus followed closely, studying a bark paper map he created by combining his observations with elfin knowledge. Behind them came Thorn, the settlement's master archer, who kept one hand near his bow and suspicious eyes on Marcus. Lyria, the young healer apprentice, brought up the rear, her satchel heavy with herbs and potions. The council still thinks this expedition is folly, Thorn muttered, ducking beneath a low-hanging branch. Trusting the human's theories over centuries of magical tradition. Your traditions aren't working, Marcus replied bluntly. 3 more branches fell from the elder tree last night, and your spring water grows darker by the hour. Ilara interrupted before the argument could escalate. The Grand Magus himself approved this journey. That should be enough for anyone. They traveled in tense silence, following the path that Marcus had mapped by tracking the progression of withering vegetation. By midday, the forest's character had changed dramatically. The luminescent moss that carpeted the ground grew patchy, then disappeared entirely. The massive trees gave way to sickly, twisted versions of themselves. The contamination flow suggests the source lies within the Forgotten Valley, Marcus explained, pointing ahead to a depression between 2 distant hills. The geography forces groundwater to funnel through that area before reaching your settlement. The Forbidden Valley, Thorn corrected grimly. No elf has entered it for generations. The old texts claim it's cursed. Not cursed, Lyria said quietly. Dangerous. The histories say our ancestors fought a great battle there against beings of immense power. Marcus raised an eyebrow. Other humans. The records are unclear, Ilara admitted. Only the memory keepers know the full history, and they're bound by ancient oaths of silence. As dusk approached, they made camp in a small clearing. While Ilara and Thorn secured the perimeter, Marcus noticed Lyria examining a dark patch spreading on a nearby tree. The same sickness, she confirmed, her young face creased with worry. But worse here. The magic feels wrong. Without warning, the ground beneath the dying tree erupted. 6 lizard-like creatures burst forth, their scales iridescent and eyes glowing with malevolent intelligence. Each was the size of a large dog, with razor spines running along their backs. Spine crawlers, Thorn shouted, loosing an arrow in one fluid motion. It struck the lead creature's flank, but bounced off harmlessly. Impossible. Their scales resist physical weapons, but they should be vulnerable to. His explanation cut short as a spine crawler leaped toward him. Ilara's blade slashed at another, but like the arrow, it barely scratched the creature. Our enchantments aren't working, she called, dodging razor teeth. Lyria frantically dug through her satchel, extracting a glowing crystal. The repulsion charm shoaled. The crystal flared briefly, then went dark in her palm. The magic is failing. Marcus scanned their surroundings frantically, mind racing. In seconds, he grabbed Lyria's satchel, emptying its contents. Finding a resin-based salve and mineral powder, he combined them rapidly, then snatched a torch from their campfire. "Everyone down," he shouted, hurling the mixture into the center of the attacking creatures. The concoction ignited spectacularly upon hitting the torch flame, exploding into caustic smoke that sent the spine crawlers retreating with high-pitched shrieks. Stunned silence followed. Thorn stared at Marcus with newfound respect. "How did you know that would work?" he demanded. "Chemistry," Marcus replied, helping Lyria gather her scattered supplies. "Their scales may resist magic and weapons, but not chemical reactions." As they recovered, Ilara studied the map again. "We're close to the valley. Whatever awaits us there is likely far worse than spine crawlers," Thorn finished grimly. "Good thing you brought a human along then," Marcus said with a weak smile. "We tend to be useful when magic fails." The Forbidden Valley revealed itself at dawn, a vast depression between 2 weathered hills. Morning mist clung to strange protrusions that rose from the valley floor, too angular to be natural, too massive to be ordinary structures. "Those aren't trees," Marcus whispered as they gazed down from their vantage point. Ilara nodded grimly. "Nor elvish construction." They descended cautiously. As they drew closer, the mist parted to reveal towering spires of metal and crystal, their surfaces dull with age yet occasionally catching the light with unexpected brilliance. Vegetation had reclaimed much of the structures, with vines and moss draping across geometric shapes that defied natural formation. "I've never seen materials like these," Thorn muttered, touching a metallic surface warily. "Not stone, not wood, not any metal known to our craftspeople." Marcus ran his fingers along patterns etched into a nearby wall. "These look like circuit pathways," he said, excitement bleeding into his voice. "Similar to technology from Earth, but far more advanced." At the center of the valley stood the largest structure, a domed building half collapsed into the earth, surrounded by a moat of viscous, faintly glowing liquid. Patches of dead vegetation encircled it, and the air tasted metallic. "The contamination source," Lyria confirmed, her healer's senses alert. "Whatever poisons our realm originates here." They approached a sealed entrance adorned with intricate symbols. The elves recoiled as they drew near, wincing. "The symbols blur my vision," Ilara explained. "A magical deterrent, perhaps." "I see them clearly," Marcus said. He studied the markings, recognizing patterns similar to mathematical sequences. "These aren't just decorative. They're a language, or code." Acting on instinct, he pressed his palm against a central panel. The group jumped back as the entrance responded with a mechanical hiss, sliding open to reveal a dark corridor. "It recognized you," Thorn said accusingly. "How?" Marcus stared at his hand. "I don't know, but these symbols share elements with human mathematical concepts." Cool blue lights activated as they ventured inside, illuminating a corridor that stretched deep underground. Surfaces that appeared stone from outside revealed themselves as something entirely different, a material that felt like metal but warmed like living tissue. "This construction method," Marcus marveled. "It's like nothing I've seen. Advanced nanotechnology, perhaps, or material science centuries beyond Earth's capabilities." They passed chambers filled with strange devices, curved glass panels, crystalline structures housing suspended objects, machines whose purposes they could only guess at. In one room, they discovered what appeared to be sleeping quarters, sized for beings taller than elves but shorter than Marcus. "People lived here," Lyria whispered. "Not elves, not humans, but something in between," Ilara finished, examining ancient garments preserved in transparent cases. The central chamber took their breath away. A vast circular room housed hundreds of crystal pods arranged in concentric circles. Within each, barely visible through clouded surfaces, lay preserved bodies. "By the elder tree," Thorn breathed. "What manner of beings are these?" Marcus approached the nearest pod, wiping condensation from its surface. The figure inside possessed elvish features, pointed ears, slender build, but with distinctly human characteristics as well. Its skin bore unusual patterns, almost like circuitry, embedded beneath the surface. A pedestal in the chamber's center caught Marcus's attention. Symbols scrolled across its surface when he approached, shifting into recognizable script before his eyes. "Project Ascension," he read aloud. "Final log. Hybridization process unstable. Magical integration with human biology failing. Systems set to maintenance mode pending solution." The floor beneath them trembled. From deep below came a mechanical groaning, followed by the distinct sound of pumping liquid. "Whatever they were creating," Marcus said, eyes widening with understanding. "The facility is still running, still pumping their failed experiment into your world." The chamber's lights flared suddenly, bathing everything in harsh blue brilliance. The floor vibrated beneath their feet as a humming sound built from nowhere and everywhere simultaneously. "We need to leave," Thorn urged, backing toward the entrance. Now. Before they could move, the air in the center of the room shimmered and condensed. A figure materialized, humanoid but composed of light and energy, its features shifting between elfin and human characteristics. When it spoke, its voice resonated from the walls themselves. Unauthorized genetic profiles detected. Security protocols initiated. Containment procedures active. The exits sealed with a decisive hiss. Crystalline barriers rose from the floor, separating Marcus from the others. "Identify yourselves," the entity demanded, its form pulsing with energy. Thorn loosed an arrow directly through the being's chest. It passed through harmlessly, lodging in the wall beyond. Physical projectiles ineffective. The entity noted dispassionately. Escalating response. Beams of energy shot from the ceiling, narrowly missing Ilara as she rolled aside. Lyria attempted a shielding spell, but the magical energy dissipated before fully forming. "Magic neutralization field active," the entity announced. "Resistance is contraindicated." Marcus observed the entity's behavior, its methodical responses, its programming-like speech patterns. Not a living being, but an artificial intelligence of incredible sophistication. "System," he called out, stepping forward. "Run diagnostic assessment. Identify primary function." The entity paused, its form flickering momentarily. Query format recognized. Primary function. Preserve Project Ascension assets and research until viable integration achieved. Marcus pressed forward. Current operational status. Maintenance mode. Year 7342 of contingency protocol. waiting for compatible genetic profiles to resume experimentation. Ilara gasped. 7,000 years. The ancient conflict in our histories. Your ancestors fought the humans who created this place, Marcus realized aloud. After their experiments went wrong. The entity rotated toward Marcus. Human genetic markers detected. Partial compatibility identified. You will be processed for integration. System override. Marcus countered rapidly. Administrative authority requested based on genetic compatibility. A bizarre duel ensued, not of weapons or magic, but of logic and information. Marcus leveraged his understanding of computer systems, identifying parameters and exploiting contradictions in the Guardian's programming. The elves watched in bewilderment as he spoke in technical concepts foreign to their understanding. Your containment protocols have failed, Marcus argued. Environmental scan indicates facility output is destroying surrounding ecosystem. This contradicts preservation directive. The Guardian processed this information, its form destabilizing momentarily. Environmental damage detected. Verification complete. Contradiction in operational parameters identified. Release containment field. Marcus instructed. We've come to address the system failure. The barriers lowered. The Guardian's form stabilized into a more defined shape, an androgynous figure with both human and elfin features. You are not the creators, it acknowledged. But contamination threatens all biological entities. Temporary cooperation authorized. Thorn lowered his bow slowly. What manner of battle was that? Not a battle of force, but of information, Marcus explained. It's a sophisticated program designed to protect this facility. I convinced it we're here to help fix the problem. The Guardian approached a central console. The creators sought perfection, to combine human adaptability with elfin magical affinity. Their hybridization process failed, creating toxic byproducts that the facility continues to process. Displays activated around them, showing diagrams of the facility systems. At its heart, a massive chamber pumped glowing liquid through transparent conduits that extended deep into the surrounding earth. The contamination source, Ilara confirmed. Can we shut it down? Lyria asked. The Guardian's expression shifted to something almost regretful. Shutdown sequence requires manual intervention in the core processing chamber. However, the chamber is saturated with concentrated magical energy. Ilara understood first. Fatal to any magical being who enters, but potentially survivable for a human, Marcus concluded quietly. The core processing chamber loomed before them, visible through a transparent barrier. Inside, machinery older than elvish civilization hummed with ominous purpose. Glowing pipes crisscrossed the chamber, carrying toxic byproducts of the failed hybridization experiments. The air within shimmered with intense magical energy, beautiful, deadly, and completely invisible to Marcus's human eyes. I can see the magic concentration, Lyria whispered, her healer's senses acute. It would burn an elf from the inside out within seconds. The Guardian's luminous form hovered nearby. The system can be deactivated manually, but requires physical interaction with 3 separate control nodes. Marcus studied the chamber layout. Show me the shutdown sequence. A holographic display materialized, detailing complex procedures that would safely power down the ancient facility. I'll do it, Marcus said simply. Ilara gripped his arm. You don't understand our magic enough, Toe. But I understand this technology, he interrupted gently. That's why I'm here, isn't it? The advantage of being human is having no magic to lose. Thorn stepped forward, surprising everyone. There must be another way. We cannot ask an outsider to sacrifice himself for our realm. Not an outsider anymore, Marcus replied with a smile. Just someone with a different set of skills. The Guardian established a communication link that would allow Marcus to receive guidance once inside. The airlock cycled open, revealing the chamber entrance. Ilara's silver eyes met his. Marcus. I know, he said quietly. Me too. He stepped into the airlock. As the door sealed behind him, He felt a strange tingling across his skin. The magical energy already beginning its work, not immediately fatal to him, but he could feel its corrosive effect. 20 minutes, the Guardian announced. After that, even human physiology will succumb. Marcus moved methodically through the chamber, following the Guardian's instructions. The first control node responded to his touch, ancient systems recognizing human DNA. Warning alarms blared as the facility registered the shutdown sequence. Automated defenses activating. The Guardian warned. The system is resisting termination. Sections of the ceiling collapsed as Marcus reached the second node. Support columns began to retract, the entire chamber reconfiguring to prevent access to the final shutdown point. The structure is destabilizing. Ilara called through the communication link. Marcus, the exit path is being blocked. Get out of the main facility, he ordered, diving beneath a descending barrier. If this place collapses, you need to be clear. Not without you, she protested. That's an order. Thorn's voice cut in. Ilara, Lyria, retreat to the entrance. I'll maintain communication with the human. Marcus reached the second node, his hand shaking as the magical energy intensified around him. The shutdown procedure was working, the toxic flow already diminishing, but the facility's self-preservation protocols were fighting back viciously. Final node is 100 meters northwest, the Guardian instructed. Path compromised. Alternative route required. Using debris from the collapsing structure, Marcus constructed a makeshift bridge across a section of flooring that had given way. The magical concentration grew stronger as he approached the facility's heart. 15% system function remaining, the Guardian reported. Contamination flow nearly halted. Marcus reached the final node, but found it partially crushed beneath fallen machinery. I need to rewire this manually, he gasped, the magical energy making each breath painful. Thorn, are they safe? At the entrance, Thorn confirmed. Marcus, the elves of Sylvander will remember your courage. As Marcus worked frantically to complete the shutdown, the chamber's integrity failed catastrophically. The ceiling gave way entirely, support structures collapsing around him. The final shutdown initiated just as his escape route disappeared completely. It's done, he reported, coughing as dust and magical energy filled his lungs. Tell Ilara. Outside the facility, Ilara broke from Lyria's restraining grip. Her eyes blazed with desperate determination. No, she whispered. Not like this. Drawing on ancient magic forbidden by elvish law, Ilara began an incantation that made the air itself shiver. Life force magic. The manipulation of existence between realms. You'll kill yourself, Lyria cried. Perhaps, Ilara acknowledged, her hands weaving complex patterns. But I won't let him die alone in darkness. Inside the collapsing chamber, Marcus closed his eyes as the ceiling came down, then felt himself being pulled, not physically but dimensionally, through a bridge between spaces that shouldn't connect. He emerged outside the facility, tumbling onto moss-covered ground as Ilara collapsed beside him, the silver in her hair now streaked with human-like white. 3 full moons had passed since the day the facility collapsed. Sylvander Forest pulsed with renewed vitality, the contamination flow halted completely. The elder tree's wounds remained visible, black patches a permanent reminder of near catastrophe. But new growth had begun, bright green shoots emerging from damaged bark. Marcus stood before the Council of Seven, uncomfortably aware of how alien he still appeared in their midst. His human frame towered over the assembled elves, his rounded ears and weathered skin marking him as forever different. Yet the eyes that watched him now held respect rather than suspicion. The Grand Magus rose, his ancient voice carrying through the chamber crafted from living trees. Marcus Chen of Earth, approach. Ilara stood at his side, her role today that of translator and witness. The streak of white in her silver hair, permanent evidence of the life force magic she had used to save him, caught the dappled light filtering through the canopy. For 7,000 years, the Grand Magus began. Our histories have remembered humans as destroyers, beings whose ambition and recklessness threatened our realm's very existence. The ruins you helped neutralize were testament to that memory. Murmurs rippled through the gathered elves. Yet you, a single human lost between worlds, have demonstrated qualities our histories fail to record. Selflessness, ingenuity, and courage that complement rather than threaten our ways. The Grand Magus gestured, and an elvish craftsman brought forward a crystal sphere containing what appeared to be a miniature ecosystem. Trees, water, and tiny creatures all suspended in perfect balance. This memory globe will preserve the truth of what transpired. Future generations will know that on this day, our understanding changed. Humans shall no longer be remembered solely as destroyers, but as potential allies whose different strengths may complement our own. Marcus accepted the globe with careful hands. Thank you for allowing me to help. As the formal ceremony concluded, Ilara led Marcus to a quieter section of the settlement. There, elvish researchers clustered around a phenomenon Marcus had never expected to see again, a shimmer in the air that occasionally solidified into a glimpse of Earth's mountains. They've been studying it since your arrival, Ilara explained. The boundary between our worlds naturally thins in certain places during specific celestial alignments. This portal has stabilized enough for passage. Marcus stared at the familiar landscape beyond, pine trees and rocky outcroppings that could be just miles from where he'd disappeared while hiking. You could return, Ilara said quietly, her voice carefully neutral. Your human world lies just beyond. For a long moment, Marcus watched the portal ripple. Through it, he could see his world. Technology, cities, the familiar comforts of Earth. Here stood the elvish realm, magic, mystery, and challenges beyond imagination. Some humans do their best work as pioneers, he finally said, turning away from the portal. Throughout our history, there have always been those who cross oceans, climb mountains, or venture into unknown territories. Ilara's expression softened. You're staying. If you'll have me, he nodded. There's too much to learn here, too much potential in combining our knowledge systems. Later that evening, they stood on a balcony overlooking the central grove, where elflings played beneath the recovering elder tree. The council had approved Marcus's proposal, a new academy where human problem-solving would be studied alongside elvish magic, with Marcus serving as both student and teacher. The first bridge between our worlds, Ilara mused, her hand finding his. Probably not the last, Marcus replied, thinking of the portal. If I could accidentally cross over, others might too. Does that concern you? He considered this. Humans are unpredictable. We can be destructive, short-sighted, brilliant, and compassionate, sometimes all at once. But I believe the best of us will find ways to complement rather than conquer what's different. As twilight deepened, messengers arrived with news from distant elvish settlements, reports of strange phenomena, unexpected visitors, boundaries thinning between realms. The cosmic alignment that had allowed Marcus to cross over was affecting multiple locations. In the oldest temple of the elvish capital, memory keepers reported a new inscription appearing overnight on ancient stone, words in a script not seen for millennia. The day we came across humans changed everything forever, and perhaps it was always meant to. Marcus gazed up at unfamiliar stars, a human far from home yet exactly where he needed to be. What happens now? Ilara asked. We learn from each other, he answered simply, and we prepare for more visitors. Your world's isolation is ending, whether we planned it or not. The white streak in Ilara's hair glimmered in the moonlight, a permanent reminder of how she had bridged realms to save him. Now they stood together at the beginning of a greater bridging between worlds. I'm glad it was you who crossed over first, she whispered. Marcus smiled. I'm glad it was you who found me. Around them, Sylvander Forest pulsed with ancient magic and new possibilities, forever changed by a chance encounter at its borders.